Hi folks, we are living through the great unraveling of the left's favorite myths, and it is glorious. For years, we've been told that diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, was the golden ticket to business success, the secret sauce that makes companies so much better. But now, reality is doing what reality does, proving them wrong. Even the woke corporations that virtue signaled the hardest are quietly rolling back their DEI initiatives because, surprise, hiring based on ideology instead of competence doesn't work. But don't tell that to Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey, who's out here claiming that CEOs still love DEI.
Talk to any CEO, major, Fortune 500 company. They'll tell you that their bottom line, dollar-wise, does better when there's more diversity in the room.
But many of these...
That's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's made us stronger.
Many of these companies, though, are ditching their DEI programs.
And I don't know why.
This is just too good. Governor Healey tells us, with absolute certainty, mind you, that every Fortune 500 CEO will swear up and down that DEI improves their bottom line. Not some CEOs, not many, no, all of them. She's so sure of this that she even tells us, talk to any CEO. Well, fun fact, plenty of CEOs have talked, and their actions are speaking even louder. They're rolling back DEI, slashing these programs, and quietly pretending they never drank the Kool-Aid in the first place. But don't worry, Healey has no idea why that's happening. No clue at all. It's just an absolute mystery to her. Now, let's break it down, because the first thing is the absolutist language that she gives us. Every CEO, all companies, immediately signals we're dealing with an appeal to authority fallacy. The idea is that because powerful people say something, it must be true. But the New York Times, a publication that would love to pretend DEI is still going strong, is admitting that companies are moving away from it. Why? Because it turns out hiring people based on their race, gender, or identity instead of, actual competence isn't the financial goldmine activists claimed it would be. And let's talk about the bottom line claim. The left loves this one. They push the idea that diversity, not in thought or skill, but strictly in skin color or identity, makes businesses more profitable. But if that were true, companies wouldn't be abandoning DEI. The second it started cutting into profits, it became a problem. Meta, for example, laid off its entire DEI team in 2023, along with 11,000 other employees, citing a renewed focus on efficiency. Translation, DEI wasn't producing results that justified that cost. Twitter, now X, gutted its DEI department under Elon Musk, and despite the hysterical predictions, the company is still running and doing better financially than under its previous leadership. A study from Revelio Labs found that DEI positions were being eliminated at a rate 40% higher than other corporate roles in 2023. Now, if DEI was such a financial powerhouse, why are companies treating it like dead weight? Even in the academic world, the same institutions that push DEI into the mainstream have admitted it doesn't work. The Harvard Business Review published multiple studies showing that diversity training, especially the mandatory kind, often increases bias rather than reducing it. One 2019 study from the University of Washington found that forcing employees to go through diversity training actually made them more resentful and resistant rather than more inclusive. Meanwhile, a Bloomberg report in late 2023 highlighted that companies scaling back DEI initiatives cited increasing legal risks after the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action in college admissions, signaling a broader legal vulnerability for race-based hiring policies. This isn't just a financial issue anymore. It's a legal one. The same companies that rushed to embrace DEI are now backpedaling because they know the lawsuits are coming. So do they really expect us to believe that businesses whose entire existence depends on making money are getting rid of a money-making strategy out of pure malice? What, did a bunch of greedy capitalist CEOs suddenly wake up one day and say, you know what? I hate making money. Let's throw out this thing that's boosting our revenue. That's nonsense. The reality is DEI was a trendy performative grift that corporations indulged in because it kept the mob happy and it made them look good. It let them parade around as socially responsible while still exploiting workers, outsourcing jobs, and engaging in monopolistic practices. But when it started leading to expensive discrimination lawsuits, unqualified hires, and actual workplace dysfunction, suddenly they weren't so enthusiastic. And can you blame them? And let's not ignore Healey's incredible lack of curiosity here. She says, I don't know why. I don't know why. Really? You're the governor. And you have no idea why major companies are abandoning DEI? That's either stunning incompetence or a deliberate dodge, probably a little bit of both. She knows exactly why. She just can't say it out loud because she's a Democrat, and admitting that DEI is failing would mean admitting that the entire narrative her side has pushed for years is built on sand. So, to summarize, we've got an appeal to authority, an appeal to emotion, a complete disregard for actual corporate behavior, and a refusal to acknowledge basic reality. This is the left's DEI argument in a nutshell. Blindly insist it works, ignore the evidence otherwise, and then pretend to be baffled when even their allies can't keep up the charade. The numbers don't lie. DEI is going the way every other failed leftist experiment went, abandoned as soon as it starts becoming too costly. The only real mystery here is how they expect anyone to keep believing this nonsense. And speaking of nonsense, here we have California Senator Schiff giving us some hot ones in the lead up to the Trump-Zelenskyy press conference at the Oval Office.
Well, there's a meeting in the White House of the leader of the free world, and Donald Trump is also going to be there because, sadly, he's not the leader of the free world. It's turning the administration is turning American foreign policy into a kind of protection racket.
This is peak Schiff. The man who spent years peddling debunked conspiracy theories now wants us to believe that Volodymyr Zelenskyy, not the president of the United States, is the leader of the free world. And he says this with such confidence, like he's unveiling some deep political truth instead of spewing absolute nonsense. It's impressive, really. This is the same guy who assured everyone that Russian collusion was more than circumstantial, only for the Mueller report to expose his entire charade. But sure, let's trust his geopolitical wisdom now. Now, starting with the obvious, Zelenskyy is not, in any universe, the leader of the free world. That title belongs to the president of the United States. Always has, always will. The term leader of the free world exists because historically America has been the dominant superpower standing against authoritarian regimes. Our military, economy, and global influence make the U.S. a central pillar of the free world, whether Schiff likes it or not. But no, in his delusional little echo chamber, the guy running Ukraine, a country entirely dependent on U.S. aid to function, is somehow calling the shots. That's not just dumb, it's embarrassing. And let's talk about his rhetorical sleight of hand. Schiff doesn't just call Zelenskyy the leader of the free world. He contrasts him with Trump in a way that's meant to be insulting. There's a meeting in the White House with the leader of the free world, and Donald Trump is also going to be there. See what he did? He sets up the premise that Zelenskyy is the real leader, then reduces Trump to an afterthought, hoping the audience just nods along without questioning the absurdity of the claim. This is a textbook example of a loaded assertion where a speaker frames a statement as if it's already an accepted fact to avoid having to actually prove it. Schiff doesn't explain why Zelenskyy deserves this title because he can't. He states it as if it's self-evident, hoping nobody notices how ridiculous it is and just buys it as some inflammatory joke. And then, of course, we get the melodramatic hand-wringing. The administration is turning American foreign policy into a kind of protection racket. This is projection at its finest. Schiff spent years cheerleading for the idea that Ukraine deserves an unlimited blank check from American taxpayers, and now he's pretending to be outraged that our government might actually expect something in return for all that money. Newsflash, America looking out for its own interests isn't a protection racket. It's a basic foreign policy. Schiff and his fellow Ukraine-obsessed warmongers act like any deviation from send them everything, no questions asked, is some kind of moral failure. Meanwhile, Ukraine is banning opposition parties, restricting press freedoms, and delaying elections. But sure, let's pretend this is the beacon of democracy leading the world. And let's be real. Schiff's entire argument isn't about geopolitics or democracy. It's about attacking Trump. The Ukraine narrative has always been a convenient club for Democrats to wield against their opponents. When Trump questioned why we were dumping billions into a foreign conflict with no accountability, they called him a Russian puppet. When House Republicans suggest that maybe we should have some kind of oversight on the hundreds of billions flowing to Kiev, they're accused of undermining democracy. It's the same tired script. Blindly supporting Ukraine is good, questioning it is bad, and anyone who doesn't fall in line is a traitor. So let's recap. Schiff's claim that Zelenskyy is the leader of the free world is factually absurd, rooted in rhetorical trickery, and serves no purpose other than cheap political point scoring. His characterization of American foreign policy as a protection racket is just projection from a guy whose party has allowed Ukraine to treat America like a bottomless ATM. And the broader narrative is yet another attempt to paint Trump and Republicans as villains for daring to question the blank check foreign aid policy that has drained American taxpayers for years. Schiff is once again doing what he does best, lying with a straight face and hoping nobody calls him out on it. Well, consider yourself called out, you pencil-neck dummy. And moving right along on the clown car of Democrat dummies, we have former U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Susan Rice, who had this hot take about the Zelenskyy-Trump-Vance situation at the Oval Office.
Well, Nicole, obviously it's a very sad day and an embarrassment for the United States on the world stage. But let's step back and analyze what's happened here. I think there's no question that this was a setup. You heard Donald Trump say at the end of that clip you played, this is great television. This was a setup. Volodymyr Zelenskyy was compelled to agree to a horrible deal that would have sent Ukraine's minerals to the United States without any concrete security guarantees. And yet, because he was trying to improve a relationship with Donald Trump, he came to Washington, he came to the Oval Office, and sat down for a meeting, hat in hand. And soon after he got there, the Vice President of the United States lit into him and started a confrontation. Now, I've been in countless Oval Office meetings with heads of state, presidents and vice presidents, as National Security Advisor, as UN Ambassador, and in other roles. I can tell you that the Vice President or the Secretary of State or anybody else, they don't jump in, hijack a conversation without the express blessing of the President of the United States. So J.D. Vance did that deliberately. Donald Trump knew what he was going to do. And I think, as he said at the end, because he can't, help himself, this was a setup for the cameras. It was a play to his base, but above all, it was a play to Vladimir Putin, to show fealty to Vladimir Putin.
Well, looks like Susan Rice is back at it again with her signature brand of political fan fiction, spinning a tale so detached from reality it might as well be a Netflix original. According to her, Donald Trump's first White House meeting with Zelenskyy wasn't just a diplomatic engagement. No, it was a setup, a grand production staged for the cameras, orchestrated to humiliate Ukraine and somehow show fealty to Putin. Because, of course, in Rice's world, everything Trump does must be a secret message to the Kremlin. This is the level of unseriousness we're dealing with here, folks. Let's start with the most glaring problem. Where is the evidence? Rice declares with absolute certainty that this was a setup, yet she offers exactly zero proof. No leaked documents, no whistleblower accounts, not even an out-of-context anonymous source, just her own speculation dressed up as fact. The claim collapses the moment you apply basic scrutiny. If this meeting was staged, who set it up? Zelenskyy himself requested a sit-down, and unless Rice is now suggesting he's complicit in Trump's supposed setup, then her whole narrative crumbles. And what exactly was the goal here? To make Ukraine look weak? Zelenskyy has spent the past few years showing up to Western capitals, hand outstretched, demanding more funding. If anyone has built a brand around publicly pleading for support, it's him, not Trump. Then we get Rice's big revelation that Zelenskyy was compelled to agree to a horrible deal that would send Ukraine's minerals to the U.S. without security guarantees. This is where her argument veers into full-blown fantasy. First, Ukraine has been exporting minerals, including rare earth elements, to Western countries for years. That's how trade works. There's nothing remotely unusual about it. Second, the idea that Zelenskyy was compelled into anything ignores the fact that he's been playing geopolitical hardball with Western nations for years, extracting tens of billions in military and economic aid from the US and Europe. He's not some naive victim blindly walking into Trump's trap. He's a politician negotiating in his own self-interest. And let's talk about her characterization of the meeting itself. She paints a scene where J.D. Vance, Trump's vice president, suddenly hijacks a conversation, blindsiding Zelenskyy with a confrontation because, according to Rice, Vance couldn't possibly speak in a high-level meeting unless Trump had pre-approved the ambush. This is just nonsense. The reality is that J.D. Vance, like many Americans, has serious concerns about where hundreds of billions in U.S. taxpayer dollars have gone. He didn't hijack anything. He asked basic accountability questions that should have been asked years ago. That's not an attack. That's responsible governance. But to Rice, even mild scrutiny of Ukraine's financial black hole is some kind of betrayal. And then, of course, we get the old, tired accusation that Trump staged all of this to play to Vladimir Putin. Yes, the classic fallback whenever Democrats have nothing else, they just scream, Russia, and hope people stop thinking. But let's look at the facts for a second. If Trump was supposedly eager to please Putin, why did he in the past authorize lethal aid to Ukraine? Why did his administration put sanctions on Russian companies and kick out Russian diplomats when he was last in office? Why did NATO allies increase defense spending during his presidency after years of freeloading? Rice conveniently ignores all of this because it shatters her fairy tale. And the irony, she's accusing Trump of staging this meeting when we witnessed for years Joe Biden's White House orchestrating carefully scripted interactions with Zelenskyy for the cameras, ensuring every handshake and soundbite fit their narrative of unwavering support. But sure, let's pretend Trump is the one pulling PR stunts. So to sum this up, Rice claims this was a setup, but provides zero evidence. She acts like Ukraine's mineral exports are some nefarious plot when they've been happening for years. She portrays Zelenskyy as a helpless pawn, ignoring his history of negotiating hard for aid. She claims J.D. Vance ambushed him when, in reality, he simply just asked questions. And finally, she drags out the exhausted Trump is working for Putin lie, completely ignoring Trump's actual record on Russia. Overall, this isn't analysis. It's straight up political fan fiction, which Rice, as we all know, is terrific at spinning. The only setup here is Rice setting up yet another desperate narrative to deflect from her party's foreign policy failures. And in other low IQ Democrat news, this is what Ilhan Omar had to say about Elon Musk.
Again, it just shows how much he doesn't know. I know people talk about him as a genius, but to me, I think he's probably one of the dumbest, luckiest people to exist on this earth.
Ilhan Omar calling someone else dumb is like a cat calling a lion lazy. It's not just wrong, it's downright hilarious. Here we have a woman who, on her best day, struggles to articulate a coherent sentence, now declaring that Elon Musk, yes, that Elon Musk is one of the dumbest people to exist. Not just in tech, not just in business, but on this earth. The sheer scale of that claim is enough to make you wonder if she even believes it herself. But of course, this is Ilhan Omar we're talking about, a politician whose most notable achievements include funneling campaign cash to her husband's consulting firm and making tone-deaf comments about 9/11. If she had a fraction of the intelligence or competence that she pretends Musk lacks, she might have something to show for during her time in Congress, other than a history of anti-Semitic remarks and Twitter tantrums. Now, Omar builds her entire statement on a false dilemma, this idea that Musk is either a genius or one of the dumbest people to exist. The reality, of course, is that intelligence isn't binary, but let's entertain her premise for a moment. Musk, the man she deems one of the dumbest, is the same guy who co-founded PayPal, built Tesla into an industry leader, launched SpaceX when NASA couldn't get a rocket off the ground, and is now pioneering AI, brain-computer interfaces, and space colonization. Meanwhile, Ilhan Omar's biggest accomplishment is, what exactly? Complaining on social media? Getting away with immigration fraud? Marrying her brother? Or is it running interference for Hamas? I don't know, you tell me. And then there's her claim that Musk is just lucky. This is classic post hoc rationalization where someone dismisses another person's success as pure chance rather than skill or intelligence. Let's be clear, luck might get you one big break, but it doesn't build multiple billion-dollar companies across entirely different industries. It wasn't luck that allowed Musk to turn Tesla from a niche experiment into the most valuable car company in the world. It wasn't luck that made SpaceX the first private company to launch astronauts into orbit. And it wasn't luck that made Starlink the most advanced satellite internet system in existence. If Omar truly believes this was all about a roll of the dice, I'd love to see her try and replicate that. Something tells me her experience ranting on MSNBC wouldn't quite translate into interplanetary engineering. But let's talk about the real reason she's attacking Musk. This isn't about intelligence, it's about control. Omar and her fellow leftists hate Musk because he's one of the few billionaires who doesn't parrot their ideology. They had no problem with him when Tesla was their green energy poster child, but the second he took over X, and started dismantling the censorship regime that protected people like her from criticism, suddenly he became enemy numero uno. She can't stand that he's exposing government collusion with big tech, reinstating banned accounts that challenge the progressive narrative, and most importantly, uncovering unbelievable amounts of government corruption that her party is also involved in. That's why she's lashing out. It's not an intellectual critique. It's a desperate temper tantrum. So, to sum it all up, Omar, a woman whose political career is defined by bad takes, scandals, and playing the victim, has decided to declare that one of the most successful entrepreneurs of our time is one of the dumbest people to exist. She provides no evidence, no counter-arguments, just a weak attempt at an insult. She dismisses Musk's achievements as luck, conveniently ignoring the years of risk, failure, and innovation that went into them. And she does all of this not because she actually believes it, but because Musk dared to step out of line and challenge her side's monopoly on information, as well as exposing their pet projects and unbelievable corruption. If anyone in this situation is proving their lack of intelligence, it's not Musk, it's Ilhan Omar, and she's doing it in real time. And speaking of Elon derangement syndrome, it seems as though it's sweeping the nation.
Nobody voted for Elon Musk. Nobody voted for Elon Musk. Nobody voted for Elon Musk.
Well, looks like we just got our latest episode of Activism for Dummies. A bunch of outraged, unemployed protesters probably sipping oat milk lattes as they try to gather outside a Tesla dealership in Manhattan as if that's some grand act of resistance. What exactly are they protesting? That Elon Musk won't censor their political opponents, or that he's exposing massive levels of government corruption, that he exposed government collusion with big tech, or are they just mad that an electric car company isn't sufficiently woke anymore? Whatever it is, you can bet none of them drove their Teslas to the protest because, most of them are unemployed and likely don't have a car. Anyway, this wasn't the only highlight from this protest. There was also, what Democrats usually do in these sing. Well, I definitely need a new pair of eardrums after that one because this is beyond parody. A bunch of tone-deaf protesters completely out of key and rhythm, chanting, "Zelenskyy is our hero," outside a Tesla dealership because apparently that's where democracy is saved now. Meanwhile, inside another group of activists is occupying the showroom, probably making it the most inefficient workplace since Congress. The whole thing is so disorganized and offbeat, it sounds less like a protest and more like a bad improv exercise. Actually, that's why this is so bad. It's just a bunch of theater school rejects, people that never made it, who are just trying to figure out how to give their life purpose. And let me tell you something, this ain't it. At the end of the day, this isn't just about protests, politicians, or the latest manufactured outrage. It's all about control. Who gets to decide what's acceptable discourse? Who dictates which voices are amplified and which are silenced? And more importantly, why are the loudest defenders of democracy always the first to shout down debate? The people screaming outside Tesla dealerships, the pundits peddling baseless accusations, the politicians rewriting reality in real time, they aren't trying to inform or persuade. They're trying to dictate. But here's the thing. The louder they shout, the more obvious their desperation becomes. So ask yourself, if their ideas were so unshakable, so self-evident, why do they rely on theatrics instead of reason? Why do they need censorship instead of conversation? The answer is as clear as their hypocrisy, and that's exactly why they're panicking. Anyway, you tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.